All right, so for our second half of this session, you are going to be hearing directly from 4 nonprofit organizations that are really doing amazing things to help maximize their success in the CFC. This has really led to drive more donations, more donors, more volunteers for their organizations. And we thought it was important to bring their stories to you and to be able to learn from one another on how you can really drive success in the CFC. So my amazing panelists, we have Haley from the Alzheimer's Association, Rachel from A Wider Circle, and Barrett from Heifer International, and Samantha from the United Way of the National Capital Area. We'll wait till everyone gets on screen, and then we'll go ahead and stop sharing the PowerPoint so we can see everyone's faces and have a robust discussion. We encourage you, if you have questions throughout today's panel, we will be taking questions at the end, so feel free to drop them in the chat. And after we are all done with our panelist discussion, we will start taking questions from the rest of the group. Got 2 more to get on here.
Yes, Barrett just rejoined, so I'm adding now.
Awesome. And we have Samantha from United Way of National Capital Area too. And for those of you who don't, my name is Brittany, I'm from Global Impact, and I will be moderating today's session. So today, many of you have been introduced or maybe reintroduced to the CFC. We have talked about the ways you can be successful, whether that be through marketing, reaching out to donors, through events. I know working for a nonprofit myself, and in what I hear from our members, the question we often get is how this really works and what is the benefit. So the first question I'm going to ask each of our panelists is, what has driven your success in the CFC? And I'm going to start with Haley. Haley, will you share a little bit from the Alzheimer's Association?
Yes, thank you so much. Thanks for pulling us together, Brittany, and thank you to our fellow panel members who are joining from our sister, we call them sister charities. So when we think about how and what has driven success for the Alzheimer's Association, we know that we have a daunting task, and that's reaching a vision of a world without Alzheimer's and all other dementia. It's really a team effort. So without awareness of the cause, we can't steward action or generate revenue to accelerate the research, drive risk reduction, early detection, and then maximizing that quality care and support. So communication is really like the underscored thing for us. The communication is core to the success of donor-centric relationships that move our whole mission forward. So when we consider the federal government as the largest employer, which we heard earlier, it should shift our thinking, right, to meet the needs of this large employer and think of the individuals that they employ as opportunities for us to serve. So we do this in 3 ways. We prepare our chapter staff with core information on the impact of the Alzheimer's Association in the workplace, which can be utilized at the kickoff and tabling events. We also share the free and always accessible resources for people living with the disease and their caregivers. So our 24/7 helpline, the around-the-clock information that is available through alz.org, and then always pointing to our local chapter support, which takes place nationwide in more than 70+ markets. And then lastly, so for that 3rd way, really acknowledging those past supporters through the combined federal campaign and tailored communications, both thanking them and encouraging them to participate again.
Thank you, Haley. Rachel, what about you guys at A Wider Circle?
Yes, thank you. And hello, everyone. Well, in addition to what Haley was mentioning, what's really driven our success is kind of readying ourselves to be very available. We have found that to be very key to getting the most out of CFC. So we really have to start planning well in advance before the campaign starts to train up volunteers to be able to attend events alongside our staff, because there are often times where, you know, we may not just be able to send someone out that's a paid staff member. We also align quite a bit of our CFC work actually outside of our development work. So you probably noticed from my title, I'm the director of advocacy. So I'm not a development person. We do that because we need to make sure that our development people stay pretty focused. Now, that's of course not possible for every group, depending on your size and the structure. But for us, that has actually worked well. We very often have our volunteer coordinators go out on these events to share those opportunities, but also to make sure that we're not just taking all of our development people, to all of these events, whether they, now it's a little easier because we have some of the online events, but particularly as we start to get more back into person, that can be quite a few hours out of the day. One of our other strategies is certainly that communication that Haley was mentioning, early and often communication with donors. We really align our outreach with right when the campaign starts. We send out kind of a big thank you for the support from the last year. And a reminder that the campaign is starting. We often will share our volunteer opportunities again at that time with individuals, or offer for them to come in for a tour. And then we also will send another communication, of course, in that last push before the campaign ends, and in alignment with any holidays or the campaign focus months, whether it's on homelessness, or maybe a note on Veterans Day to speak about the work specifically that a Wider Circle or any of our organizations are doing with a particular population. So for us, kind of making sure we're ready to be available, and then having that really close communication with our donors.
Those are great. And I like at the beginning, you touched a little bit on, every organization is going to be a little bit different. And Robyn kind of closed the session with this earlier. All of these strategies aren't going to work for every organization. And so you really have to take a look at the internal resources within your organization and determine who and where you can pull and where you can manage and collaborate. Barrett, let's go to you. What have you done? What do you feel is your most successful strategy within the CFC?
Well, thank you so much for having me here today, and I'm very excited to talk to all of our fellow charities. Everybody does great work. One of the things that I think makes our CFC campaigns are so successful are the actual donors themselves. They are the ones that are expressing the interest, and I feel like when we explain our mission and we do it well, especially through the tools that we have with CFC, I think that that's our best efforts always come from kind of the advertising packages we do with CFC. We lean really hard into marketing with CFC, going through advertising channels. We have our CFC number. You'll see right over here. I keep my CFC number on every Zoom I'm on, regardless of audience. It's also embedded in my email. I think that that's really important because if you're a CFC member, you know what that means. And if you're not a CFC member, chances are if it's really bugging you, you're going to ask me what it means. And I think word of mouth is probably another great way that we're involved.
Thanks, Barrett. And Samantha, what about you all?
Sure. Thank you, Brittany, for and everybody else. So, speaking for United Way, the National Capital Area, going at the end of the group, I can say that, every strategy that folks previously have mentioned is definitely can be impactful as well. And I think for us, again, it really comes down to that exposure and that awareness piece. We try to take advantage of event invitations as often as possible and speaking opportunities as often as possible. And being a federation as well, we speak on behalf of our nonprofit members and partners too in those opportunities. And we really sort of see the CFC as being a really great way for us to access the donors that are in the federal agencies, and it's a great way to not only get donations but build your volunteer base and additionally share what we're doing with the community, sort of similar to what Haley mentioned. You never know if you're talking to somebody who might need resources at some point, or knows somebody or has a family member in the area who might benefit from certain resources as well. And so there's an opportunity to kind of be able to provide additional support through your true impact and your mission as well.
Yep, definitely. So I heard pull a few themes from all of you. The first one is that federal employees are an important audience, whether it be people that you actually serve, new potential donors, and new potential volunteers. So the CFC is important to your organizations because it gives you access to this really important group of individuals. And then the second thing I heard is just being successful is being strategic. And so being available, preparing, thinking about what staff you're dedicating to the combined federal campaign, and that can help drive some of that strategy. So that's some of the key takeaways that I'm hearing from you all. A lot of what we, I imagine that these are also areas of strength for your organizations, right? And this is how you approach other lines of fundraising, other work that you're doing, other programs. And within anything that we do as nonprofits, we have to attract resources to help us do that. So the question I'm going to ask, and this is the question that I get asked frequently, this is all great, but how am I going to do this all? How am I going to get my organization and my leadership to dedicate the resources that I need to make this happen? So I'm asking, what tips do you have for them? How have you navigated getting resources and attention within your organizations for helping to implement these strategies? And Haley, I'm going to go to you again.
Awesome. Thanks for the question. I think this is one that we could answer about anything that we're trying to get accomplished for our orgs. So being in that environment and understanding what's important, especially during the time frame of the campaign itself, the year end is important for everyone in this space. And the Alzheimer's Association, it is also our peak walked-in Alzheimer's season. So we have representation in markets nationwide, 630 plus different walks taking place. So our staff, to acknowledge what you had to say, Rachel, they're taxed. They're already out and doing so much. So what we do is rely on data storytelling. And when we found that works through not only our internal campaign education that we put together, but also how we roll it out to chapter staff. So knowing that the Alzheimer's Association home office staff, I say myself, but it's truly my team of great colleagues on our corporate initiatives team are actually making this happen, pulling together exactly what the chapters need to know and exactly what we are accomplishing and pushing forward from the national standpoint to make it turnkey and easy for our local chapters to engage in the campaign itself. So that data storytelling piece is how many employees, how many people, and the sheer volume and size of who can be reached is something that perks up the ears of our field staff taking place nationwide. And we also use that cross-functional kind of component to emphasize what's happening and how these volunteers can be utilized as potential helpers in easing that burden in the future.
Awesome. Rachel, what about you all?
Yes, so for us to ensure that we are kind of garnering enough of our effort internally to really get the best result from CFC, we have an annual standing meeting where all teams come together and we really look at our numbers, from the past year, and we say, okay, so if we're bringing in this amount, what kind of resources should we be putting towards making sure that we can at least reach that again, if not more for next year? And so that means it doesn't just ride on one person to push forward the strategy, and everyone knows kind of what role they're going to need to take on, right? We have, who's going to be making all of the materials for that year, and what is our messaging for that year going to be? What's our social media strategy? We don't want to be thinking that up on the fly. We want to make sure it's already set before the campaign starts. What are going to be our new volunteer engagements so that there's something of interest, something new for people to come and see who maybe have engaged in that part. We also, for teams that might seem like they're outside even of those kind of working areas, we engage any staff who'd like to learn about public speaking, to engage in the actual events themselves. So we see that as a professional development opportunity as well. So we try to make sure that every team at a wider circle has some role to play in making it a big success. So that's how we kind of garner it. We make sure that we have that annual meeting so that it isn't just falling on any one team or one person.
That's great. Barrett, what about you all?
So my story is a little bit different in that I didn't start with CFC or CMG until about 2019 or about 2017. And what I quickly realized is that this was not a priority for the organization. So I put forth a plan of action and then approached leadership at the end of 2018 and challenged leadership to make it a priority. Because of the significant reach of CFC and the variance of donors, location, and the possibility of unlocking those funds for charitable use, well, I mean, it's bigger than we can all really state. So leadership did take my challenge in 2019. And we have been developing resources, and all resources that we develop through our creative services team does have a component of CFC built into it, where again, we're either talking about our number, or when we're meeting with the fundraising team and talking about targeted ads for TV or for digital marketing. If we're doing targeted markets, we ensure that we're lining up those with our CFC markets that we're trying to target as well. I know that it's not always easy to get leadership to say, oh, we're going to go all in, but once they do, there's an extra level that you can get to and get your charity and your branding out there that people understand, and having a really quick, a really tight, quick 10-second ad is the most extraordinary thing you can do.
Like that. Samantha, bring us home.
For sure. So I think, again, being at the end, all of these strategies are super great and super helpful for different organizations. I know for us, we build the CFC into our fundraising strategy every year. And so it is a big part of who we are and what we do and how we consider our fundraising for the year. So I think having that is important. To build off of what Barrett was saying as far as marketing and getting your name out there, we also will purchase like a 10-second air on like federal news radio to just sort of remind people like, hey, get into the CFC, donate. And so that can be really helpful for that too. And then to help you sort of increase that return on investment so that you can make that argument to increase resources towards CFC fundraising, put your CFC number on everything. I think that is one important piece as well. And even something simple as having like a tablecloth on your table when you go to an event can help your image stick longer in a donor's head by the time they get back to being able to put your organization into the system and give their donations. But I mean, when we do swag or anything, even pens like that we give away, we have our CFC number on there. So it's just a really great, everything that you do can really help tie back to that effort that you're putting in.
Great. Okay, so now I'm going to dig into a few things that each of you shared and get a little bit more insights out of the different strategies. So the first I'm going to dive into a little bit is around marketing, and you've all talked a little bit about marketing. But Barrett, I was hoping you just could share a little bit more on kind of what that marketing strategy looks like. I really liked what you said earlier about even the alignment with other things that you're doing and that you were able to make CFC align with those.
Absolutely. So one of the great things that we've been able to do is we've done some advertising through Global Impact Strategic Workplace Advertising and Email Program. And I'm not shilling, so just want to be clear, but it has shown tremendous results, and there are a lot of opportunities to be included in that. It allows us to go into the DC metro markets. We've gone into Seattle. We've gone into places where we know that we have things already running. We also know that CFC donors want to know what the impact is. They want to know what is their giving gonna do? And that's a really hard thing to say in a 30-second radio ad or in a banner or anything like that. So we work really hard with our creative services team, who just makes some crazy amazing graphics for us. But reaching into markets where you know CFC is prevalent is probably the #1 thing we do. We work with marketing, with our marketing team. I actually had another team that works with schools and churches, and so even when we go to conferences for schools and churches, we still have like a thing that's up in the top of our booth that says federal employees, CFC 12079, because we want everybody to know. You don't know who's walking through the hall, right? You don't know if they're a federal employee and they're there representing their church or anything else. So Samantha said it best when she said, put your CFC number on everything.
All right. Well, if people don't take that away, it's come up, I think, in everyone's responses. So I like that a lot. Okay, Rachel, you talked a little bit about events and how your organization determines and kind of prepares for both the staffing of the events, but then your strategy around it. Can you talk a little bit more about how have you leveraged events within the CFC?
Absolutely, yes. Well, I think we're all pretty familiar, you know, which events are a little bit more fruitful, but if you're maybe newer, for some of those newer ones, I will say we've definitely found, I'll just say before we get into the strategy, that speaking events are, you know, beyond the tabling, I'll just say they are really the most fruitful. So you'll really want to attend those if you get an opportunity. Although you certainly can have some really beautiful one-on-one conversations with people at the tabling. So I do think as you prepare, making sure that, you know, you're looking at the different types of engagement with CFC that you're going to have. So at those tables, making sure that, and I'll actually say one thing that we have not done in many last years, we don't have, you know, all the giveaways at a wider circle tables. Ours is usually a little bit more on the small side. But we've found kind of what works for us. I will also say it is like depends with our CFC number, but having one handout. For us, it hasn't worked well to have 10 different handouts. People get very overwhelmed with that. They really need, who are you? What exactly is your money going to do? So those $3 buy statements are so impactful. I know for certainty that has pulled a lot of people in to give. And then, you know, ensuring that you're having your volunteer engagements as well. So really just keep it clean and crisp, I think, is the best thing. Maybe even having a stand that has a quote from someone who has served through the organization so people can understand, you know, what a neighbor, you know, has experienced with your organization. I think that's quite powerful. And making sure that you do have some staff that are comfortable doing the public speaking when you get that opportunity. It's not something for us that we can wing. That is, we really want to make sure that people are very comfortable, that they can tell the story of our work. So those would be kind of our strategies. I also say main strategy is really keeping an eye on your email, because those opportunities come and go. As you know, they're first come, first serve. So they come and go very quickly.
Yes, very important. And as in the chat earlier, a lot of people talked about the event session that is happening later this week to learn more about events. So definitely attend that. And I think one of the important points is that you don't need a huge budget to go and get a bunch of giveaway items or really impressive. You just need that one pager to attend an event. And again, staying on top of your emails. So I think that's great. Okay, Haley, you talked a little bit about how you engage donors and kind of that acknowledging donors and how important that is to your organization and how you found success there. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Yes. This whole acknowledgement piece is something that's so critical for any donor, and especially for those who are as dedicated as we know all around this table, that these are the folks giving from their payroll. Before anything else comes out of their pocketbook, this is something important to them. So being able to properly thank our donors, it is difficult with you know, opt-in being not the default for participation in the CFC. So what we do is we have instituted this recurring email campaign each November. So right as we're getting towards the end of the year, really leveraging the time frame of year-end giving top of mind, the campaign is in full swing. So there's understanding about what's happening, and then sending an email. And that sounds so basic. And I'm talking an email, but hearing like, oh man, we need to beef it up. I've got other opportunities that we need to be taking advantage of from peers here. But simply that one acknowledgement to past donors that has gone out. It was, of course, personalized, talking about participation in the combined federal campaign, and then saying we need you again. So this is what you've helped accomplish, and then here's why we need your help going forward. This is still a worthwhile cause that needs those dollar buy sentiments that we do struggle to wrap our arms around exactly what and how when we're communicating about research, some intangible things we get there. So I would love if anybody has some learnings on that. I'll be listening in for other charities help. But we did have a significant open rate of about 25%, and then that click-through rate is strong as well. So everything driving to learn more about the campaign and how to get involved, promoting that number for the association.
That's great. And I so appreciate you being willing to share that number, because I think for a lot of nonprofits, you can take that back and say, listen, like, this is what's important. We need to do an acknowledgement. We'll have a good open rate. Other organizations have had success with this. And hopefully that helps move the needle, because we know how important that is to those federal employees to know that their money gets to where they want it to go and to be re-engaged in the CFC year over year. So I have one more question, and then I will go to the chat to see if there's anyone else. And so, Samantha, you talked a lot about volunteerism, and I know we also have another great session on volunteerism later in the training series. But can you talk a little bit about what the role volunteerism has played for your strategy around federal employees?
Absolutely. Yeah. So in particular, I think there's always a question, especially coming out of the pandemic, about virtual volunteerism as well. And where do we build in virtual volunteerism versus in person from our federal employees? And so we make sure that we have virtual volunteer opportunities throughout the year. And it can be something as simple as a note card writing campaign that we can do with an agency or group, to something where we at United Way, the National Capital Area, we can do some more skills-based stuff virtual as well. So we've had HR groups that have come and done some mock interviewing for some of our financial empowerment center clients. And so we try to build that in where we can. And I think in volunteerism in general, your volunteers are going to give more to your organization in general. That's research that we all know out there, being in charities and nonprofits. And so finding ways to bring folks in the door as a volunteer is another way to be able to get them to be passionate and excited about your mission, which means they're going to be more likely to donate to you when the time comes at the CFC as well. And I will just reiterate Brittany's plug. I'm moderating the session on Wednesday. And so would love to have folks come out and learn more about volunteerism, how organizations and agencies are using the CFC platform and information to access volunteers and create meaningful volunteer opportunities.
That's great. All right, so I saw one question come in earlier around, is it much harder for regional nonprofits? And so I know both Rachel, Samantha, you represent organizations that do work in a certain geography, and Haley, it sounds like you have a little bit of a touch with some of your local chapters and how that works. Anyone want to tackle that, or maybe share any challenges or successes, or?
Well, I can just share. I think, everyone donors are certainly drawn to certain issues, right, that you're working on. And so I think sometimes being a regional organization, there's a benefit to really put out, yes, we work right in this community, like right where we are right now, right down the street. I think there's a huge benefit to that. But, wider circle, we focus on ending poverty. So that's one realm. So I imagine some of the larger groups, they have the benefit of someone might be passionate about their specific issue, and then they can highlight that not only do they do work kind of in that region, but they do it all across US. And I think different donors are just going to be interested in different things. We certainly get people over, at our tables at events because they know that we're local. So sometimes it is helpful to, be actually advertising that.
Yeah, I think one thing that I'll just add there about a regional nonprofit is I think that the value of kind of the audience is also can be different, right? So the volunteer base, their potential volunteers is a local nonprofit. You have federal employees are therefore also local potential volunteers. And then also the access to services. So I know being exposed to actually a wider circle through one of the CFC charity fairs attending as a nonprofit, when I went to go donate a used couch, I contacted a wider circle because I knew what their mission was. So, there's kind of that other reason to participate there, which can be a benefit, I think, for a lot of regional nonprofits. Okay, there was another question here. The question is, how do you start from scratch? We are brand new to the campaign. We are regional. We are rebuilding capacity in fundraising and communication space. Is there a tip sheet for folks who are brand new, especially smaller organizations? So during our kind of from opportunity to action session, there was a number of tips shared. But I do know that the CFC also puts out a number of really wonderful charity resources and toolkits to help with your campaign, help kind of get started and to talk through some of these key points. But again, what I'm hearing from our panelists today is think about a strategy, think about how you're going to engage with events, think about how you're going to handle donor communications, and then how you're going to market your organization. What are those messages that you can send, and what are the different mediums that you're going to put it out? Anyone have anything to add?
I would say when you're doing that, just keep track of everything, every activity that you're doing and what it's netting you, whether that's, you talk to 5 people and, write down their names real quick so that you can keep track of if donations come in from them, or if you go out to an event, do you see an increase in donations shortly after or potentially as a result of? So really doesn't have to be super detailed data, but just start keeping track of what you're doing as well so that you can begin to calculate that return on investment and know where with the resources that you have availability to you, where you're going to get your maximum impact.
I can layer on if that's all right. I love what you said, and I think of the internal infrastructure that has to be in place for anything to be successful. So you don't already have colleagues that you're arm in arm with across marketing and donor services and chapter development, or if you have any other, people you can lean on in that core team that's making this come to life. That's going to be so critical, not only to getting ready for the campaign, but also when it's here, getting the volunteers or staff people assigned to those opportunities. And then on the back end, donor services or whomever is taking that precious donor data and doing the right thing with it is so critical. So start to finish, just having that full circle support system in place will be really helpful.
Yeah, and I think that's one other thing to bring up is that through the CFC, you actually get a lot of really good data. You can find out, what agencies are donating to your organization, which regions of the country are donating to your organization. And that data can help you be more strategic. And, it's kind of unique to actually workplace campaigns overall. Not all workplace programs across the country, whether in the private sector or other public sector campaigns, give you access to that kind of data. So I think that's another big benefit of participation here in the CFC. Okay, so we are at time before we send a wrap up, I just want to thank all of our panelists for agreeing to come on our peer panel today and to share some of their best practices, to share where they found success. We are so appreciative, and we hope that it was beneficial to all of the nonprofits that are listening here today. We know that many of you probably have lots of successes and challenges and things to share as well. So we'd love to hear from you. Feel free to keep it going in the chat or in the session after this, but thank you all. And I'm going to turn it back over to Robyn, who's going to close us out.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And before I close this out, I do want to give a tremendous thank you to Haley, Barrett, Rachel, Samantha, and you, Brittany, for this very informative and engaging conversation and the sharing of best practices. It was such a wonderful conversation. I just thank you. So that's it for today. Thank you all for attending and for your questions. Before we do go, there's a few things I want to mention. I want to note prior to closing out that both CFC Giving .opm.gov and givecfc.org are both currently up, but note that we are not in an active campaign season until September 1st, unless the employee is a new hire or retiree. So we did send around a document with a lot of different places to navigate on those sites. You can go take a look. You can look at them now, but know that they will change. So we'll also be around after this program in our breakout session to meet with you and answer any questions or just talk about anything that you need to know or you felt did not get addressed during this presentation or want to follow up on what was addressed. But before we go into that session, I know there was a question that came up in the chat about the training sessions and should you go to all the training sessions? And just want to give you an overview of the schedule. There are trainings tomorrow through Thursday of this week from 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern. We're going to take a week break and then be back on the 25th through the 27th to conclude the program. There are many great presentations to come, and while you're encouraged to attend as many as you can, I know time's limited. So I'd like to point your attention to the slide that we have, which shows which sessions may be of interest. We're also going to put these dates in the chat. All are really interesting, but if you want more of something that might be a nonprofit focus, you're urged to come tomorrow to CFC1, which is the nuts and bolts of the CFC and really all you need to know. I'm following up really from the great information that Vanessa shared in our first session, and also a conversation on workplace giving trends tomorrow. So that's from 2 to 4 p.m. And then on July 12th, as Samantha had plugged and mentioned, thank you for that, there is a panel on volunteerism at 2. And then following right after is a discussion on how to build CFC events. And then Thursday, July 13th at 3 p.m., there is a conversation on the 2023 CFC marketing plan. I know Victoria had put that in the chat, so thank you. And then on July 25th from 2 to 3, we have the state of the CFC, which is the OPM report, which is really a great thing that will be presented by Keith Willingham. And on 2:30, they're going to talk about the CFC regulation change that is coming down the pike. So thank you so much for your support and for your participation in this great program. I'm so glad to see you all here today. So in terms of housekeeping, I just want to ask Elizabeth, are we going to go directly into this? Oh, wait, no, I have a question. Robert Jennings, you're on.
Well, just because I can't stand having this microphone and not using it. We talked about scheduling just really informal for anybody that wants questions to put forth at the end of the day. Are we doing those sessions, Robyn? Can you talk just a little bit about that?
Yes, we are doing that today. These sessions are going to be, since the day ends about 4 o'clock, they're going to be set for 4 o'clock each day after we have presentations. Elizabeth, I don't know, we started early, we ended early, yay. Are we going to go straight into that, or are we going to take a break?
Well, that's entirely up to you. We may have had folks that did jump off from the meeting and may return at 4 p.m. for the Q&A. So if we start early, we might miss out on some of those folks, but I mean, we can certainly start, and I'm sure it'll take us past 4 o'clock.
Yeah, I'm all for starting.
And Robyn, we're doing those sessions daily, correct? After each training session scheduled day?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, they
not
will be
just
at 4
today.
p.m. every day. So whichever sessions took place that day will regroup at 4 p.m. Eastern
Great.
Standard
Thank you,
Time.
Elizabeth.
And I just want to respond to a question. Yes, you will have access, and there's a question from Sammy, that these sessions are being recorded, and we will provide you with access to all materials and all the resources that were shared during today and throughout the training sessions. Okay. So I think we're ready to break out.
Yeah, are you ready
Or
for
stay here.
for the breakout?
We
I
will
think
stay
we're
in this
ready.
room. Since this was just one session, we will remain in this room for the Q&A.
Perfect.
Mhm.
Okay.
Well, I have one.
Sure.
I saw the list of activities or events coming up, and someone said it's first come, first served. So how do we know when it's open and when we start trying to get on the list?
So I think that's a really good question for MP May and for Victoria. When you go and sign up for events, when you submit your listing information, you then sign up for events. And then, as Beth had noted, and I know there may be changes to the events process this year, so I think we need to hear what updates are going to come in our next session on events. But to get on that list, it is first come, first serve. Like, if you are asked, Beth, can you help me with this on the process, just to make sure I'm getting it right?
Yes, and I think that with whatever we're saying, we need to understand that there will be forthcoming the process of what it will be.
Yeah.
But what happens is there's often a number of spots that are available for an event. And then what happens is charities are randomly selected. And it is based on first come, first serve to fill those spots. So it's very, I mean, I will say, again, I can't guarantee that this is going to happen, but it's rare that an event will fill up. We maybe had that happen a couple of times last year, but it was extremely rare. So that's what we mean by like the first come, first serve. But there often are limited number of spaces because they can't just open it up to everyone. And some charity fairs, it might be that you're there with several charities, and some charity fairs, it might be that you're the only charity that's there, and that can be the same for speaking as well.
And
I hope that answered your question.
That was perfect. And also sometimes during event season, there can be a very quick turnaround to respond to these events. So you know, it's especially during the really busy time of the campaign in October, you know. So we as an organization, as a federation, often advise our members to leave us with more than one contact to reach out to in the case of events, because if you're not available or you're on PTO, like people go on PTO, there's someone else that can get that email as well.
Thank you.
Sure. Is there a training session for very small NGOs? I think for purposes of this training session, it really is for nonprofits of all sizes. You know, as I had said during the presentation as well, is that this is really, we're trying to show the full expanse of everything that's open to you, knowing as a nonprofit participating in the campaign, being very mindful of the fact that you might not have the resources to do so. You know, the trainings that Vanessa gives to apply to the program, all of the trainings that, you know, MP May and the other outreach coordinator, Tribal Tech do, are there to really prepare you for success. All of these trainings are open to all, and you know, but we do know that, you know, there are some things that just might not apply.
Just to tack on to that, Robyn, I think, out of what the panelists shared, I think there are a few small, a few specific strategies and kind of a roadmap for nonprofits anytime you're determining what your strategy should be, is kind of first taking a look at what are the most important pieces of the CFC to you. Is it specifically just revenue? Is it getting more volunteers? Is it expanding visibility for your organization to this audience of donors? And getting clear on what your kind of big goal would be through the CFC. I know all of us want to raise more money, but there are those other goals in there. And then taking a look at what resources you have, is there a staff person? In a lot of cases for small nonprofits, it's not a staff person, but it might be a board member or a volunteer that maybe is a federal employee. And they can be your best advocate in the CFC and sharing your mission. And then, in the panel presentation, one of the things that you heard constantly was share your CFC number. And so that's something that you can do whether you're a big nonprofit, small nonprofit. And to be honest, it's sometimes easier for a smaller nonprofit to make sure your CFC number gets on everything. For larger nonprofits, sometimes that's a battle. So, those small strategies can make a difference. And, hopefully if there's other kind of small organizations out there, it might be something worth connecting with each other in the chat to share a little bit on some of the strategies that you've used as well.
Thanks, Brittany. Let's see. I understand that segmenting your donor base by potential federal employees is part of the strategy mentioned earlier. Are there additional markets or organizations in which CFC donors would be prevalent that could help nonprofits increase visibility to new donors? So,
go ahead.
You want to take it? Go.
No, I mean, you can take it if you got it.
Go. You go first. You go.
I was just going to say that, I think that looking at even some of the data that you get from the combined federal campaign, there's, kind of big workforces right within the CFC, like the U.S. Postal Service, like Department of Defense, military. I mean, these are huge workforces that are all a part of the CFC. And so many others, right? All of the different federal agencies are big workforces. So there's that approach of looking at the agency and department. Then the other element is just, and this can be harder for small regional organizations that are not in the DMV area, but there are specific areas of the country that have large amounts of federal employees. And that's not just in the DC area, there are little pockets elsewhere. But taking a look at a regional approach as well. Where are there big military bases? Where are there large amounts of federal employees? That's what I would say. Robyn, what do you have to add?
Yeah, thanks, Brittany. And yeah, there are definitely different strategies if you're a national nonprofit versus if you're a local nonprofit. I mean, obviously, the nonprofits in the DC metropolitan area have the advantage of being in the National Capital Area Campaign, which raises between 25 and 30% of the total funds in the CFC. So, that's something. But if you're looking, and I do want to go back before that and talking about the segmenting the donor base by federal employees and why we want you to do that. And that the reason for that is to avoid commingling your CFC donors with other donors because you do not, the CFC, the recurring gifts of the CFC are very vital, and we don't want to run the risk of somehow taking your CFC donors and maybe inadvertently transforming them into one-time donors. So we really want to make sure that the CFC donors are being cultivated accordingly so you can hopefully retain them. Also, when we're looking at reporting and this more for national organizations or where you are, take a look at where the donors are. And you can look at it this way. You can, if you have limited resources, you can go and address those donors and focus your strategy on those donors, or you can say, hey, we're really doing some great things in this market and we're not really doing as well as we think we should be, and focusing your efforts there. So, there are, different strategies. Now, and then there's the international charities, and that's a little bit different. I'm gonna punt that one back to my colleague Brittany to talk
Yeah.
about that one.
Yes. So, I mean, I think for international charities, there's a few nuances. The first things first is whether it's giving to, whether you care about homelessness, whether you care about clean water, whether you care about, I mean, federal employees are going to give where their heart wants to give, whether that be a global cause, a domestic cause, and that's really based on the donor and their interest. In terms of specific strategies, I would say there are some strategies that are more challenging for international charities. One would be the volunteerism piece. That can be a challenge. I would encourage you to kind of dig a little bit into the virtual volunteerism piece and what opportunities might exist there as to whether or not you can accept volunteer hours. But really all of the strategies in terms of attending events, if you can and you have the staff, whether it be marketing and advertising, and then engaging donors, that goes across whether you're international, domestic, or otherwise. One other nuance to the events for international charities, actually the virtual event component is really helpful, because now you know a lot of international charities don't have the same volunteer reach or the same staffing reach if you're a national nonprofit across the country. So actually virtual volunteerism for international virtual events for international charities have actually been helpful, because you can often get visibility in additional markets where you might not have staff or volunteers. So some of the same, some a little nuanced.
Thanks, Brittany. Are there any other questions? I think oh wait, there's one new message in the chat. Oh, I don't see any other questions in the chat. Does anyone have anything? Robert.
Well, so one reason why I wanted to do these sessions is to give everybody a chance to let us know if there was something they were looking for that they didn't see, if there was a highlight of their day that really stood out for them. For me, the biggest thing was advertise your CFC number year round. That's a no-brainer. Absolutely leave it there so that if anybody encounters your agency during the year, they can come back to you because they know you're a CFC agency. Absolutely best information I heard today. But anyhow, I just wanted to make sure that everybody had an opportunity to let us know if there was something that they wanted that they didn't get, or something about what they're expecting or what they heard. We still have 135 people online, so let's hear from some people.
Let's see. Okay, so Haley had a question. Are charities being assigned fees on the pledged value of volunteer hours, or how are those pledges counted? That's one that I think is more of a question for OPM on terms of the fees. Does anyone know offhand?
Well,
Robyn,
so
I work in
yeah, Tony, get it to him.
Oh, Tom. Okay, great.
So no. So the fees are only based on monetary pledges. They are not based on volunteer hours or the value of them.
Tony, explain the volunteer hours, where that number comes from.
Sure. So federal employees, in addition to giving money, they can pledge time to charities that they want to work at. And during the listing phase, charities are given the opportunity to tell us how much is an hour of volunteer time worth to your organization. So when we do a report on the CFC, we can say $70 million in money was donated and $2 million worth of volunteer time was donated. But distribution fees are only calculated on the value of the pledged dollars. We do not count the hypothetical value of a volunteer hour.
Thank you. And Tony, I have a follow-up question, just curious. So if the charity does not give a value, is there a particular value that's assessed? Is there an average that you use?
We will. We will go back to the charity and say, hey, you said you'll take volunteer time, but you didn't give us a value. Please give us one. The actual average of all the charities that accept volunteer time is almost exactly what the independent sector national average is. It's in the right in the mid-20s, like between $24 and $26 an hour. So, you know, we do want the charity to assign it as, and, you know, usually in any given year, there's only, you know, a half a dozen that might forget to fill that number in.
Okay, and then there's a question, are there any restrictions to volunteer opportunities?
No, not really. And as a matter of fact, when you go into the listing this year, you're actually going to see more information because for the last 5 or 6 years, we've just said, do you accept volunteer time? Now we're going to say you have the option of telling us what types of volunteer time are you looking for? Are you a legal services clinic that needs lawyers? Are you a medical clinic that needs doctors, nurses, and med techs? Are you a food clinic or food clinic? Are you a food program that just needs somebody to help serve food at breakfast or lunch? So you'll have an opportunity to tell us a little bit more about what kinds of things federal employees might do for you. So if they're looking online, they might be able to narrow down their interests.
Thank you. And I know that Vanessa, who is going to be part of the panel on volunteerism, will be sharing the updates that are being made or have been made for the 2023 listing when it comes to volunteerism.
Correct.
Yes.
Thanks, Robyn.
Thanks.
I think that's tomorrow.
Is
Or
it
whatever day
Wednesday?
she's doing that. Wednesday. Okay.
It's actually Wednesday.
And thank you, Robert, for answering the question about whether they can give one-time donations in the campaign. I appreciate it. Let's see. Let's see. Tom, hi. We are so an advanced copy. That's something I can talk with the rest of the participants on this. I don't know if we're going to be able to get that done for this session, but that is a really great suggestion for us, and I'll see what I can do on that. Yes, the donor must initiate their gift every year. That is correct.
Yeah, the CFC only allows, if they choose a recurring gift, they can only donate for the 12-month campaign season. There are no gifts that roll over year after year after year. It must be initiated every year.
Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, I am not seeing any.
Sorry, my question is, how is the money distributed throughout the year? Let's say people pledge, I don't know, $50 a month. How is that distributed to the organization?
Tony, you want to take that one, or?
Sure. So we begin distributions on April 1st. And so the first check that charities get would be, well, it's not a check, it's all electronic. The first transfer is April 1st. And then the rest of the money is distributed on the 15th of the month. So May 15th through the following March 15th. So it's monthly from CFC to charities or federations. Now, if you are a member of a federation, the federation could have a quarterly distribution process. So the Handsome Italian Federation might only give money to its member charity, 4 times a year. That's okay with CFC. as long as they've got a policy. So some might distribute it monthly, some might do it quarterly.
And Tony, we used to have an option, donations under a certain amount. We made a one-time disbursement. Does anything like that go on in CFC right now? Do any charities get those one-time disbursements?
No, that is CFC history. So when Robert and I used to ride on our pet dinosaurs, if a charity got a small amount of money, we just pay it all out up front.
Right.
But now we can track donations by the individual donor. So if you're a CFC donor, you can go into your account and see, hey, it's August, how much have I already donated? How much is still to come? And we know exactly which charities the money's gone to. So we don't have to average those things out.
Now, Tony, a question has come up, and this is one that is a source of much confusion among nonprofits for a clear answer. It's whether you can reach out to your previous donors for donations who have given in prior years.
Yes.
Yeah.
As long as you don't use their official email addresses. Any charity can communicate with any donor from any prior year using their private email address. No one may communicate with a donor using their official government email address. I usually say .mil.com address, .mil.gov addresses. So if you have a donor that gave you a .mil or a .gov address, ask them to opt in and give you their private email.
Thank you. That is something, that I think nonprofits are really not completely sure of. I know that the rules say that you can't, sell or lease the donor names, but sometimes that's also commingled with resoliciting your donors or asking them to give to you again. So I really do appreciate the clarity, Tony.
And the next question is, do we still distribute funds that are not designated? So starting in 2017, the CFC does not solicit undesignated funds. So, in the past there were, but even today with mobile apps and text to give, if there's an event, people can make a direct contribution to a particular charity using some of those methods. So we don't have undesignated gifts in CFC.
Thank you.
And then there was a question about a charity. I don't know the specifics about a charity showing negative distributions, but I would say to, call the help desk at the CCA to find out what's going on there, because there should not be negative distributions.
That can't happen.
Well, I'm not even going to speculate. There are some very technical reasons that it could happen if a retiree died and was giving out of his or her annuity. But that's very technical, and it's not going to happen very often. So I would just say to contact the CCA and find out what's going on. Do they know anything about what those pledges are? I mean, people do die. People leave federal service. They muster out of the military and they retire. So sometimes a pledge is not fulfilled, but it's usually in the 5 to 10% range. It's not 100%.
That's really low.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so Tony, this was Sheila. It's about $500,000 that disappeared since the last time I logged in. So I don't think it's a donor that died.
I don't think, well, not at that amount, but there are cases, Sheila, where some charity may only have 1 or 2 donors.
Right.
That could go upside down. But something else is happening in start with the CCA and see what they can tell you as far as, where those collections have gone south.
Because it was showing money that, I received money a couple of weeks ago, and now it's showing that it didn't happen. but the money is in our bank account.
Well,
Yeah.
that's weird. So, and Tony, thank you for clearing out how the agencies can reach out. I probably misspoke earlier in the chat when somebody asked about reaching out. And I said that agencies could reach out to any donor that has provided them their contact information. They are allowed to use that information. That's, you obviously narrowed that down. You're not supposed to reach out to their work. They are supposed to be providing you their personal information. And that's what you should be using to reach out to them to either say thank you or, hey, we're still in business or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Thanks for clarifying that.
Sure. Well, see y'all tomorrow. Great first session.
Very
I
great
think,
session.
Thanks,
We have
everybody.
more?
thanks. I think there was one question
one
from
more?
Haley regarding the fees assessed, whether they're based on pledges or collections. If there's
They are based on pledges because we collect them in April, so they are based on pledges.
thanks.
Okay. See you tomorrow.
All right, everyone. Thank you so
Thanks,
much.
everybody.
Bye.
Thank you, Robyn.
Thank you. Thank
I'll
you.
see
This
you.
was
I'll see you tomorrow.
awesome. All right.
Okay.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Take care.
Robyn, is Curtis still on here?
I don't know. Curtis, you here? So are we allowed to stay on and talk to Curtis? Is that what's happening?
I don't know, Elizabeth. What's the
Thanks,
story?
Haley.
Is Curtis still
Thanks,
on?
Curtis.
I don't.
Oh, let me take my mute off. Yes.
Well, Curtis, that's a different. I'm looking for Curtis Rumbaugh.
We're
if
looking
he's
for
still here.
Curtis
Thank you,
Rumbaugh.
Curtis.
Oh,
No.
okay. All
No,
right.
Curtis Rumbaugh has
Does
jumped
anyone
off.
have any other
All right.
questions while we're still here?
Guys, this was awesome.
Thank you.
300 and some at the high point. Elizabeth, did you get a count on what the high number was?
I'd say it was about 356.
Yeah.
That is so cool.
And you probably had more. You had people jump off and then jump in. So your overall number may be higher.
Right. And I think we're gonna have more because they knew that this was for agencies only. And so some
Yeah.
would probably not have tuned in here. Great job, everybody. First group. Hey,
Thank you.
good first
Thank you.
day.
The wonderful team. Wonderful team we had here doing this.
Good job.
And a lot of fun doing this. And I think, moving forward, we need to have this session for nonprofits. We really do.
Oh, yeah. 100%.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That's the
And
one.
you're absolutely right. We need to start with this. Yeah.
I think we do. And I think we need to have some sort of maybe higher level and expand upon anything else on CFC 101 that's going to be covered tomorrow, just in case they don't, the nonprofits don't attend the next day.
I think this is great, and I'm anxious to see what happens tomorrow. I have to help move my son, but I will tune in as I can. Good
Thank
job,
you.
everybody.
Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Elizabeth. Thank you for everything.
Of course.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us and that stuck around, the 30 people that are still
Yeah,
here.
and if any questions,
Yeah, we're still here.
We're
Ask
still
away.
here.
If not, we'll
All
see you
right.
all tomorrow.
Have a great day, everyone, and really, really thank you for everything and for the great questions and the discussion. Very much appreciate it.